Friedrich Merz arrived in Rome expecting a coronation, but instead walked away with what amounted to a political death sentence. The CDU leader entered the Italian capital under the illusion that Giorgia Meloni would act as a compliant junior partner, a useful prop to help him project authority back home, where his poll numbers were collapsing in December 2025. That assumption proved disastrous. What was supposed to be a victory lap quickly unraveled into a full-scale diplomatic humiliation on the global stage. Merz came across as an arrogant schoolmaster from the north, attempting to ram his Dublin Turbo plan through Rome, a last-ditch effort to force Italy to absorb thousands of migrants in order to cover for Germany's own failed policies. But he overlooked one critical reality. Giorgia Meloni refuses to be anyone's scapegoat. Rather than submitting, she launched a counteroffensive that left the German leader politically stunned. With cameras rolling, Meloni laid bare what she described as the dark core of Berlin's approach, labeling it German schizophrenia. She publicly embarrassed Merz by exposing a truth he wanted buried. While he pressures Italy to seal its borders, the German government continues to bankroll the very NGOs that enable human smuggling across the Mediterranean. She challenged him openly, asking how Italy could be told to close the door while Berlin pays to keep it open. The blow landed cleanly. Merz stood motionless and stone-faced, unable to offer a single word in response. He was revealed not as a statesman, but as a hypocrite who demands order in Brussels while financing chaos. And see, Meloni's ultimatum was unmistakable. Italy will not serve as a dumping ground for Berlin's moral arrogance. Until Germany dismantles a welfare magnet and ends its financial support for smugglers, Rome will not take back a single word or knee. The so-called strongman of the CDU was reduced to a silent novice when confronted with reality. If the migration clash was a humiliating slap, what came next on the economic front amounted to a public execution. This was the moment Friedrich Merz, the man who built his entire image on financial expertise and corporate authority, watched his credibility collapse completely. To grasp the scale of this humiliation, it is necessary to recall why Merz traveled to Rome at all. He did not arrive merely as a politician. He came as Europe's self-appointed chief executive, determined to walk into the Chigi Palace and lecture Italy on the Sacred Stability Pact. He planned to lecture Rome on budget discipline, austerity, and fiscal responsibility, the familiar German script that has dominated the European Union for the past 2 decades. He wanted to play the strict professor, correcting a disorderly student. But Friedrich Merz committed a fatal mistake. He forgot what year it is. It is late 2025. The balance of power has not merely shifted, it is fully flipped. The Germany Merz speaks for is no longer Europe's industrial engine. It is a system in visible decline. The evidence is overwhelming. Germany is trapped in the middle of a severe deindustrialization crisis. Volkswagen is closing plants, an unthinkable confession of weakness. Major chemical companies are abandoning the country. Energy costs have turned destructive, corroding the core of German manufacturing. Giorgia Meloni understood all of this, and she was ready for him. Instead of remaining silent and absorbing the lecture, Meloni transformed the press conference into a lesson in public humiliation. She did not simply defend Italy. She took apart the German economic model on live television. With an expression close to pity, she outlined a new reality. While Germany is buried in red tape and choked by the weight of its own ideological restraints, Italy is expanding. Taxes were lowered. Bureaucracy was cut. Markets were unleashed, Meloni stated while staring directly at the German leader. The contrast was brutal. A leader labeled far-right was instructing the head of Germany's Christian Democrats on the principles of a free market economy. She portrayed Merz not as a reformer, but as a figure overseeing a system that attempts to preserve prosperity through debt and illusion. Then came the moment that made the room fall silent, the moment analysts are now describing as the collapse of the German myth. Meloni, with calculated precision, chose to expose Berlin's hidden dealings. She strongly implied and then nearly confirmed the presence of secret back-channel talks. She disclosed that while Merz lectures from the podium about fiscal discipline, his government is privately begging in Brussels. The disclosure detonated instantly. Merz has been quietly pushing for relaxed EU debt rules. The hypocrisy was overwhelming. The CDU, the party that spent a decade crushing Greece and Southern Europe with austerity, The party that worshipped zero deficits as doctrine is now asking for leniency. And for what reason? To rescue decaying infrastructure and fill the enormous gaps created by its failed energy transition. Meloni did not miss her mark. She methodically stripped Merz of his authority. She posed a question everyone was thinking. How can the German chancellor lecture Italy on stability while asking for permission to create more debt just to stay afloat? She defined the situation without hesitation. The sick man of Europe has changed address. He no longer resides in Rome or Athens. He now sits in the chancellery in Berlin. This went far beyond a simple political strike. It was a complete dismantling of Merz's credibility. Meloni framed his economic agenda as nothing more than the failed policies of the former traffic light coalition, repackaged in black CDU branding. She revealed him as a leader without direction, overseeing an energy transition that is excessively costly, ideologically rigid, and ultimately reliant on support of others. For the global media watching, the moment was impossible to forget. The German chancellor, long viewed as a symbol of European strength, stood there resembling a bankrupt petitioner with nothing left to offer. At the same time, the Italian prime minister stood confident, instructing him on the principles of economic freedom and growth. Merz had come to Project Authority. He wanted a signal that Germany was back under his leadership. Instead, Meloni demonstrated that the German engine has stalled and that its driver is asleep at the wheel. She sent a clear message to the world. Italy will not finance Germany's ideological experiments. Italy will not rescue German failure. The psychological impact of this exchange was profound. For decades, German influence in Europe rested on a single foundation: economic supremacy. We pay, therefore you obey. That was the unspoken rule. Meloni tore that rule apart. If Germany cannot pay, if Germany is the one asking for help, then Germany no longer leads. Friedrich Merz walked away from that podium not as the head of Europe's strongest economy, but as the caretaker of a country in decline, publicly corrected by the very leaders he believed he could dominate. The economic giant had stumbled, and in Rome the impact was unmistakable. The economic rebuke was severe, but the final strike was decisive. It hit the core of Friedrich Merz's influence, his standing with the United States, and his confrontation with the right at home. Since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January 2025, anxiety has spread through Berlin. Merz, scrambling to preserve a weakening transatlantic bond, tried to cast himself as a reliable ally. Yet in Rome, the reality surfaced. Washington no longer sees Merz as a future, but as a figure from a fading era. Giorgia Meloni, by contrast, is viewed as Trump's favorite partner in Europe, and she deployed that advantage without hesitation. As Merz stood insisting on more weapons for Ukraine and an open-ended path of escalation. Meloni undercut him by aligning with Trump and declaring that the era of war must end. She argued that Europe now needs a strategy for peace. The result left Merz appearing isolated, cast as a lone warmonger, a hawk who failed to notice the final whistle signaling the end of the game. Yet the deepest humiliation was personal. Back in Germany, Merz has constructed a strict firewall against the AfD, repeatedly claiming that any cooperation with the right represents a betrayal of democracy. Yet there he was in Rome, pleading for support of Giorgia Meloni, a leader whose party embodies the very values Merz vilifies at home. Meloni exposed this contradiction with a single, decisive move. She openly praised the patriotic movements sweeping Europe that defend national sovereignty, while deliberately ignoring Merz's CDU. Everyone present grasped the message. Her true allies are the forces Merz attacks, not Merz himself. She laid bare his role as a weak strategist who condemns conservatives in Berlin to appease the leftist media, only to court them in Rome when it suits his needs. Friedrich Merz intended to use Meloni as a prop. Instead, she revealed him as an opportunist devoid of principle or moral direction.